I can't stress enough how important it is just to be good to each other and support each other.
Yeah. They're not thinking about corporate culture. They're thinking about how much money am I going to make.
Welcome back to Ascend Legal 101. I'm Ramona, the director and coach and consultant here at Ascend Legal Recruiting. And I have 31 years of experience in both law and aviation. My whole end game is to inspire and empower you to achieve your personal and professional goals. So what I'd like to do is ask that if you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends and family if it's something that you think is valuable to your community. Today, I'm going to speak with Janet Hodson, who has 17 years of experience in human resources management. And previous to those 17 years, she worked on litigation teams for 10 years. So she knows her way around a law firm. She has been such a valuable guest before. I hope that the conversation that we have today will be really helpful for your team or your firm or yourself. I'm certain that it will make more than one person's a little squeamish, but that's okay. We're having hard conversations over here. So let's go.
Hi, Janet. Thank you so much for returning and coming back to talk to us about corporate culture. So intentional corporate culture versus toxic corporate culture, or cultivating corporate culture, or having an emphasis on corporate culture. And let's just get right into it. I'd really like to know why you think an emphasis on corporate culture is missing in most law firms.
Well, I'd like to start by saying, because somebody asked me the other day, what is corporate culture? What is it? And really, I think it's aligned goals between every member of your team. I think there's a lot of places out there that will say, oh yeah, we've got a corporate culture. But I think if you ask the staff and lawyers, what's the corporate culture, you may get very differing responses. So understanding that a corporate culture first is where everybody's on the same page, not just about the workplace environment and how their employees are treated, but also the services that they're going to provide to their clients. So let's start there. That's corporate culture. I think it's missing in a lot of law firms because when lawyers are going through school, I think that they think a lot about the practice of law, the kind of service they want to provide their clients, the kind of law maybe that they want to practice, that they want to be an associate at certain types of law firms. Their goal is maybe to be a partner, but I don't think they put a lot of thought into what kind of employer they want to be. So they go up the ladder as an associate, and then one day they're a partner. And what comes with that is owner, of course, and employer.
And so what I'm hearing you say is, I think it's like you inherited default corporate culture. Like, we've all got a corporate culture, but I guess it depends if you have a unified intentional corporate culture or just a whatever comes with whatever personality shows up. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that I don't know the discussions that come between partners when they're deciding that one of the associates should be a partner with them. Do they talk about their goals and whether or not they're aligned? Do they talk about what kind of employer they want to be? Corporate culture has to be deliberate. It doesn't happen accidentally. It has to be deliberate in that all of the partners are on the same page with what kind of work environment they want to provide, what kind of services they want to provide, and they have to stand behind that every day. with every action.
So what if there's an absence of this unified corporate culture? How is that going to affect sort of everybody, not just the partners, but all the employees?
Well, I think for a start, it probably breeds some insecurity in the workplace, because the staff are unaware of the goals of the firm. And in turn, that probably leads to them feeling like maybe things aren't fair, maybe things aren't equitable, maybe they're not getting paid a fair salary, maybe they don't feel included in what's happening in the firm. Like a corporate culture should be very inclusive. Everybody wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And for a lot of legal assistants, it's the firm in where they work. So they need to feel included in that.
And how do you know if you have an insecure employee?
Well, there's lots of symptoms to that kind of insecurity. I mean, one is hoarding work, hoarding knowledge. It makes them feel more secure if they're the only person in the firm that knows how to perform a particular task. They're very quick to pass judgment and point out somebody else's faults. If they point out that somebody's done something wrong or made a mistake, it makes them feel more elevated in their position and more secure. Lots of emphasis on their own achievements, and almost a martyr type mentality. Maybe lots of overtime, maybe lots of sick time or no sick time. Very little holidays, because how can the office function without them? They need to be there. So all of these things can be symptoms of somebody who is feeling insecure in their position. I mean, there's numerous other ones. Certainly, they could be bullying somebody, and that comes with pointing out somebody's faults and somebody's shortcomings.
I see people too, like by the time I see them and they're in touch with me, usually people come in if they're feeling super disempowered, and they're looking for ways to sort of get their power back, right? They're looking, so they act out. And I can totally relate to that, because I have such a strong personality that if I'm feeling disempowered, then I hit hard, right? Mm-hmm. And so I can always really relate to the people who come in, and I can see they're having confidence issues, and I can see that they're feeling super disempowered. And oftentimes there's a really long-term history of feeling victimized. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine as an HR person, you see people like that, it becomes a real toxic environment. So, what do you do? How do you stop the toxic spread? Or, how do you act on something like that?
Well, I think, and we touched on this a little bit in our first conversation, the first video, where when somebody comes into the workplace, it's making them feel secure in their position. Sometimes that toxicity doesn't come from the workplace. Sometimes there's always exceptions. Sometimes it comes from their home environment, or sometimes it comes from their previous workplace. I've heard lots of examples where somebody is toxic in one law firm and they've moved into another law firm, and nobody could possibly believe that they would have been toxic in any kind of environment, because they're a team player, they're really supportive of their coworkers. So toxicity can come from all different places. But I do believe that in law firms, if you have a corporate culture and expectations are provided to new employees up front as to what's expected in their behavior around their colleagues and coworkers, then at least you've got a fighting chance to ensure that you keep that collegial atmosphere. I think too that encouraging staff to share their knowledge and support their coworkers in a way, and actually, commending them for helping their coworkers and colleagues, helping them to learn new things and be successful in their role makes a big difference.
So what do you do if the toxic person in the office is the boss? Not you, because the law firm hierarchy is that there's all these partners. There's you as the HR manager and the staff. And so what do you do when it's the boss or the senior partner who's the problem?
That's difficult because the partners need to understand that that person is a liability to them. We live in a very litigious society. People are always looking for reasons to launch a claim against somebody. I'm sure employment law is very busy, especially with COVID. So it's a difficult one when it's the employer and the owner. I truly believe that partners, because they're employers, because they have a responsibility to their staff, that they need to lead by example. And discouraging that and discussions and maybe anger management courses are in order. I mean, one thing that I do in my role is when somebody has something negative to say about somebody else, I'm very discouraging of that kind of behavior and that kind of talk. So you can lead by example by turning it around and pointing out some of the good things about that person. Sometimes reassurance is just required. It's so difficult to say what's causing the toxicity and the issues with the employer that until you get to the bottom of that, it's difficult to rectify.
Right. Well, I think probably you're in a really good position because I personally know at your firm, you don't have that problem.
No.
But, certainly historically, we've seen that. I mean, I've been in this community for over 30 years. It was normal to have people at the top who were not always playing by the rules that were set out for everybody else, right?
Oh yeah, I remember when I was a legal assistant, I was called into a lawyer's office and she threw a box of Kleenex at me and said, "You're going to need these."
Yeah.
When I sat down and proceeded to tear a strip off me. So not only have I seen it, I've been subjected to it, and it's not fun.
Me too. I actually had a lawyer throw a box at me across the office, not a box of Kleenex, a box. And of course, nowadays, he would have got his ass handed to him. But at that time, he was letting off steam or whatever it was.
It's very easy to make excuses for people that behave badly. We have to stop doing that. We have to stop doing that, and we have to expect more and demand more.
So how do you eliminate the problem without eliminating the employee?
Well, I think it's a process. I believe that there's only a few different reasons why somebody is toxic in the office. One is that feeling of insecurity. So sometimes getting to the bottom of that can help quite a bit. If it's something to do with their personal life, well, you can probably get to the bottom of that with discussions with them and send them in the right direction to an employee assistance program so they can get the counseling and help that they need. But I think that they need to be aware that the behavior is not acceptable. I've been privy to some of these talks with employees. And let's face it, a lot of people don't like confrontation. They don't like to hurt somebody's feelings. But if that employee doesn't understand what the expectations are, there's no room for improvement. And they need to acknowledge it first. I think that's a Dr. Phil saying.
Right.
You can't change if you don't acknowledge the problem. So getting them to understand what is not acceptable and what the expectations are moving forward, and that there's going to be a follow-up meeting in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And after that meeting, there has to be another one. And generally speaking, I follow a rule of thumb: 3 meetings, 3 talks, no improvement, then unfortunately that employee needs to go.
I've actually seen that too. And sometimes you just have to make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Are you noticing with COVID and the having to change the way you work or the way your staff works, meaning, you know, some work from home, maybe some are in the office, whatever that structure happens to be? I know this is hypothetical, so I'm just throwing this at you, but if you had an employee who clearly has confidence issues because they're a bully or you're seeing erratic behavior or whatever it is, but they do excellent work, would you still have them working, but just working from home? I mean, do you see, I don't want to say ways to accommodate this behavior, because I don't believe we should accommodate that behavior. But if you do have somebody who does good work, can you just say, well, you just can't be in the mix because you're toxic? But if you still want to keep your job, here's how we're going to do it.
Maybe there's a possibility for that to work. It's not something that I've had to try or test out. Maybe it does work, because sometimes the people that are toxic are really good at their job. They're workhorses. I mean, that's part of maybe why they're toxic. It contributes to it because they're working so hard and they're not feeling like they're being commended. So maybe that works in this time. There are a lot of employees now working from home. Unfortunately, it fractures the corporate culture. It fractures that inclusive feeling for the staff. It's hard to feel like you're included in everything when you're spending a lot of time working at home.
Right. I guess that brings me to another question, is how do you maintain that cohesiveness and that really inclusive, positive corporate culture when you don't get the face-to-face?
I mean, Zoom meetings are great. When everybody in our office was working from home, we had staff meetings via Zoom. And keeping everyone up to date on what's happening with the firm is huge. I remember years ago, I had a lawyer say to me, "Oh, the staff aren't interested in that. They don't want to know about that." And I said, yeah, they do. They need to feel like they're included in what's happening with the firm. They're spending a lot of their hours and a lot of their energy here or at home working with the firm. So they need to feel like they're included. There's nothing worse than hearing something about your firm from somebody who's at another law firm.
Yeah.
It really makes you feel like you're out of the loop.
Yes.
And outside of the circle.
I think you made a really good point there. In my opinion, this is a good takeaway for lawyers. Do not assume that your staff are not in it in the way you are, because, you know, I was interviewing people, and it was when I worked in a law firm and we were hiring new staff. And one of the lawyers in this interview said, "Well, you know, this is just a job. It's not like a career."
Wow.
And I said, "Are you nuts? I gave up 5 weeks of holidays and flex days to come work at this firm because this is the kind of law I wanted to do. And I make less money, I have less holidays and no flex days because I made this choice purposefully because this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want. So I think the takeaway for lawyers in some of this is that you don't know how invested your staff is. You don't. It's not just a job. What do you think?
Absolutely. The legal assistants that I know are really invested. You know, they give up time with their kids and families to be there and ensure that the client is looked after and ensure that they're doing a good job for the lawyers that they work with. So to suggest that they're not invested in the firm it's ludicrous.
How do we shift that mindset in corporate culture, in law firms in particular? Because sometimes the people at the top are thinking billable hours. Lawyers have a completely different sort of set of goals than the staff do because the staff don't get paid based on what they're producing. The staff are caretaking, right? Oftentimes, right? They're taking care of you. They're taking care of your clients. They're taking care of all the crazy people who call all the time because they're emotional wrecks, right? They're
Right.
how do you educate both sides?
Well, I think understanding that the staff are invested for sure. Seeing that, and instead of thinking about the firm as the lawyers, thinking about the firm as a whole, everyone in it. It's that teamwork, having a team mentality. You're all on the same team. Part of that is aligning your goals, making sure that all the partners have the same goals, working towards the same place that you want to be, and letting the staff know what that is. So everybody's on the same page. It makes decision making so much easier in the future. When you're faced with a problem, which answer aligns with your goals? But if you don't know what the goal is, if you don't know what the mission is, or the corporate culture that you're trying to develop within the firm, how do you solve the problems without knowing that? So aligning everybody's goals and making sure that everyone on the team is aware of those goals would go a long way in providing a more inclusive environment.
If you could say anything to our audience, you know, let's pretend that your bosses aren't going to watch this.
Oh no.
No, but if you know, what are your sort of best tips for support staff, and what are your best tips for lawyers? Because there's always, like, there's someone like you who are trying to keep them together, right? You're the hub, so you're the control tower. How are you directing that traffic? What's your best advice to both legal assistants and lawyers?
I think first I would say know that the people around you are doing the very best that they can. They're trying to ensure that the clients are looked after, and they're trying to do a really good job at that. Lawyers as well. I think we're all just trying to do the best that we can. So I think if you start from that place, give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think anybody's intentionally trying to sabotage anything, or they're certainly not intentionally making mistakes. Mistakes happen, and we're all human, and nobody is perfect. I mean, I say to people all the time, please don't expect me to be perfect. You're going to be disappointed. I'm not. So I think I would start with that. Feel confident that the people around you are doing the best that they can. And if they falter, they're aware. They're aware that they've made a mistake, and do the best to support each other.
You just reminded me of something. What about boundaries? So say you've got a lawyer who really wants to serve the client. And of course, the paralegal also wants to serve the client, but maybe the lawyer's starting to get the paralegal to do things that are out of their purview, or say completing documents that another professional should have completed before it even got to your desk. How can somebody safely set those boundaries?
Yeah, that's a difficult one too, because I don't promote people working within a box. I think that if you have those hard lines, I mean, I compare it to government, and we've all done this, where a government worker is sort of stuck in a box and they don't venture out. And even if they're asked to help out with something, it's no, that's not in my job description. So no. So I more encourage people to branch out a little bit, to help each other, get out of their comfort zone a little bit and try things. Maybe the problem comes up though, in that legal assistants need to voice that they don't have experience in this area, or that's not something that they would normally do, but they would give it a try. Let's give it a try, but I'm going to have to ask somebody for help. Or who do you suggest I go to for some advice on how to do this task if it's something that you've never done before? And I think that starting with that soft approach with the lawyer maybe helps a little bit, makes the lawyer aware that, you know, he's going to have to review that work carefully because it's something that the legal assistant has never done before.
And what if it's a lawyer who is such a people pleaser that he just or she just says, oh, don't worry, Ramona will do it. Ramona will take care of that. And Ramona looks at something and says, I'm not doing this. The X, Y, or Z, the psychologist should have done this. The realtor should have completed this form. You are not covered by this insurance, and neither am I. Am I going to get that commission? Am I going to get paid for that report? Right? So,
Right.
you know, what do you do? Like as a legal assistant, say, what do I say?
Well, I think you're right in that you have to express that. You have to speak up. We all know about liability within the firm. We wouldn't be successful within a law firm without knowing what constitutes liability. So, I mean, the lawyers, of course, know that as well. Sometimes it just needs to be brought to their attention. So I would encourage the legal assistants to speak up. A lot of people are not good with boundaries, and lawyers and legal assistants they're no exception.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said, you know, we've got this whole community filled with people who work hard and who are really good at their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'd like to say, well, so-and-so is a people pleaser, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe so-and-so is just so awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, I have a lot of friends. I have no idea how they do what they do.
Yeah.
Right? They're just so good.
Yeah. There's lots. Oh, talented legal assistants. So dedicated to their role and the work that they do. They amaze me every day.
Going back to that question that I had earlier, like what if the boss is the toxic person? I guess if the boss is the toxic person, you're going to go through staff like Kleenex,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how do you sort of stop the bleed?
Well, in the end, it has to be the partners. I can only do so much. I worked with a lawyer that one time got so angry, picked up his phone and threw it across the room. So toxic and so damaging to the people around them. And, you know, what's unfortunate is that you can talk to that person about the problems that they're causing within the office and how they're damaging the people around them. And 9 times out of 10, they're unaware. They're just unaware. I was just angry, swearing in my office, throwing a phone. But I want them to understand they're dealing with human beings. They're human beings. For one of those people in your office that you work so closely with, do you want to be the cause of them going home in the evening and in tears, or not able to function in the evening with their kids because they feel so awful because of the environment that they're working in? Do you really want to be responsible for that? I mean, especially with COVID right now, don't we have enough to worry about, enough to cause us stress and concern? Why do that? Why do that to the people around you?
And do you think an apology is enough? Like, would you go to that person and say that you're going to have to apologize? And I mean, lawyers are always like, I'm not apologizing, I'm not admitting liability, but sometimes that goes a long way.
Well, an apology definitely helps with some. I had a lawyer apologize to me once, and I was a little bit cheeky at that time. And he said, I'm really sorry for what I said. I hope you didn't take it personally. And I said, you don't affect me personally. That's, but for some people, it certainly does. It affects them personally because they're working as hard as they are in most cases to make the work easier for the lawyer. So they're putting in all this time and energy trying to make their life easier so they can provide good service to their clients. And then to be berated or subjected to that kind of hostility it's insulting, it's degrading, it's hurtful. So an apology helps for sure. I suggest that if you are being apologized to for that kind of behavior, never say it's okay. People respond to apologies by saying it's okay. It's not okay. Thank them for that apology because it's well deserved.
Right. Right. Thank you for apologizing. I really needed that.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Because you're right. A lot of people say, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And that just gives somebody a pass.
Well, it does. It does. It sort of lets them know that the apology wasn't really necessary.
Right.
They have to stop hoping things are going to get better.
Yeah.
Let's just hope things will improve.
Well, I think too, certainly, I mean, I don't want to generalize here, but it's among men, if you have a partnership that just leans sort of more, the ratio of gender is more men, there is a tendency to turn a blind eye to bad behavior because number one, they just don't want to deal with it. That's why you're there, right? And number two, they'll give each other a pass. They just do. Where women, they're out for blood. There's no giving anybody a pass, right? So I think it's tricky in a modern environment to have a gender ratio that's skewed more towards having a lot of men in leadership, where you have sometimes a lot of passes because that's a cultural norm. Passes given to especially older men who are used to doing things a certain way, right?
Yeah. That's right. And maybe what they don't understand, I mean, all of my experience with employees really is biased in that it's females. I haven't had experience with male employees. I mean, certainly male associates, but when it comes to support staff, I really only had experience with female support staff. And something that seems really common to me is that when somebody is hurt or feeling there's an inequity, or they tell people, they tell the people around them. And I've heard it referred to as gossip lots of times, gossip. And I actually have my own theory when it comes to why women in particular do that. And I'm sure there's some people out there that will disagree with me, but I really believe that forever women have been told, relax, calm down. It's not that big of a deal. So for the most part, we've been told that whatever we're feeling, it's not really valid. It's not really valid. We're over exaggerating. So I really think that when women feel hurt or slighted or insulted, they tell people because they need validation for the way they're feeling. It's almost like recruiting people to be on their side, to let them know that what they're feeling is valid. They're not going crazy. They're not overreacting. So it spreads. It spreads. If somebody is feeling slighted, insulted, hurt, it will spread throughout the firm within hours. Really quick. So if you've got an employer that is toxic or treating employees badly, you can bet that it's not just having an effect on the employee that is feeling slighted or hurt. It's going to have an effect on the entire office within a matter of hours.
Right, and I would imagine it will have an effect on the firm's reputation within a matter of days.
Yes. Yes, it absolutely gets out there. It gets out into the whole legal community. We all know that there's firms in town that are considered problem firms. And they're problem firms because they've got some toxic employees that have never been dealt with. So why would they change now? Unless they can see the benefit. And for a lot of lawyers, some exceptions, of course, it's in the dollar signs. Where's the benefit? Where's the cost analysis? I mean, do you know staff turnover is costly, very costly for law firms. I mean, you've got the one person that's given notice. Well, from the time they give notice to the time they leave, they're working at half-mast. It's just natural. So productivity has gone down for them. Then there's all the people around them, all of their coworkers, wondering, why are they leaving? Do they know something that I don't know? Is there something going on here? So now you've lost some productivity with all of the other staff as well. Then there's the time it takes for, a person like myself, or whether it be the accounting person or the managing partner, the time that it takes to find somebody new, advertise, interview, maybe pay a placement fee through a recruiter like yourself. Maybe it's unenrolling too in benefits or group RRSP. So should provide an exit interview to find out why that person has determined that another law firm is a better place for them. So lots of time and energy, lots of lost productivity. Then they leave, and then you've got somebody new in their place. Well, they're going to be working at half-mast for a good 3 months, maybe 6 months. until they get into the flow of things. So when I mean, if you were to put a cost analysis together, and I've done this before, depending on how long the employee has been with the firm, you could be losing up to a year's worth of their salary. So if somebody's getting paid $60,000, that's what you're losing because you're losing that employee.
Wow.
It's very costly. I mean, especially when you take into account too how much you've invested in that employee. I mean, you can think about them as they're human capital. They're a part of your worth and your value. So you invest in this employee by training them the way you do things. They know all of your policies and procedures. Maybe they're taking some courses along the way. So you're investing in their knowledge. It's like investing in the stock market. You invest in a stock. If that stock just disappears, you've wasted all of that time and money investing. So, when somebody's been at your firm for a long period of time, them leaving for whatever reason is very costly. I always say, if it's about money, when somebody wants an extra $100 a month, $1,200 a year, $2,000 a year, think about what it's going to cost you if you don't just give them that. If that's what's causing the turmoil. I mean, certainly do your research, make sure you're at market value. Overpaid assistance can be just same kind of problem as underpaid assistance, but you've got to weigh the cost for sure.
I think particular to the area of law as well. So if you're looking at something like real estate, or particularly commercial real estate, if you have an excellent conveyancer or an excellent paralegal, then those billings really are about the work that they do.
Yeah.
And so that your entire bottom line rests with that.
Well, and a lot goes into making a good employee, not just the work that they produce, but are they on time every day when they come to work? Are they dependable and reliable? Are they there when you need them? Do they get along with everybody? Do they contribute to the team? So sometimes if they don't have exactly the right knowledge, but they've got all the other aspects of a good employee, now there's somebody that's worth investing in.
Janet, I'd like to thank you again for joining me, because I think sometimes you and I have conversations that can be hard. I know that we are trying to approach it in a really sort of safe way so people don't feel exceedingly challenged. But the truth is that these issues that you're talking about are incredibly challenging in the work environment or in a law firm. Nobody is going to say, oh no, that's not a problem, right? Mm-hmm. But it's how you approach them. So I appreciate that you're willing to sort of step up to the plate to have your voice be heard in these conversations, also because you're going to look at it in a different way than, say, somebody like me who might be coaching somebody along or finding somebody a new job. You can look at it as an employer, but also as somebody who goes to bat for their staff. So thank you again for adding to that. I'd like to invite you back, so I hope you'll come back and talk to me about other hard things.
Absolutely. I welcome the opportunity.
Excellent. And 2 questions for you. The first is, if somebody wanted to send you their resume or get in touch with you or take a look at your firm, where can they reach you?
Well, John Southward, we do have a website.
And my last question is there anything that you feel is really important that you and I did not discuss? you know, have I missed something?
I can't stress enough how important it is just to be good to each other and support each other, especially during this time with COVID. It's difficult for everybody. So, and to the partners, lawyers out there, concentrate on what kind of work environment you're providing for your staff.
Yeah.
It's important. A happy, healthy, supportive work environment means productivity goes up. And when productivity goes up, the work just flows.